Here we go. First thing we're going to talk about is spending. Number one, financial behavior, spending. I'm good at it. Are you? So when we talk about self-awareness, self-management, self-efficacy, and different skills you can tie into spending, one thing I would really like to bring up and that you'll see repeated over and over again here is the idea of opportunity cost. The economic concept of opportunity cost. It comes in all forms, and every single choice we make, whether it's what to eat for breakfast in the morning or how we get home from school or what TV program we want to watch, everything comes with an opportunity cost. I think it's so powerful for students to start recognizing that when they make a choice, they give something up. That's within their locus of control, but we own the decision to give something up, and see both sides of it. And following that, identifying wants and needs at an early age. This is another economic concept related to spending that's so fundamental. Being able to recognize the difference between a want and a need, what feelings or emotions do those generate? And they're sometimes the same and sometimes different. What we really look at here as well, spending brings up emotions and emotions influence behavior. Sometimes emotions influence behavior specifically towards spending. There is a cyclical connection, or if you will, a two-way street. The more we can acknowledge that, the more we can develop those self-control methods. And the last thing I'm going to mention, again, if you're having any hesitation on whether this is content appropriate for students, I just really want to point out that our kindergartners, our first graders are consumers at this point, earlier than any of us ever were. The second they have a screen or access to a screen, they can be consumers, because we are in this era now where spending is happening completely different than how I learned to spend money or how Miladies learned to spend money. We learned with cash and counting. We are in an era of frictionless spending now, which is what we're calling it when we load those cards onto our phone. And now with just a tap of a button, we can spend money. So we need to start having our kids recognize value in spending money, what that action means. And so these are some of the things that we can do to sort of develop those skills in a non-tangible money world. And now Milady is going to join in, and she's going to talk a little bit about considerations for special populations as we're talking about spending in our class. And unfortunately, we have some issues happening as well here. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue. Oh, I know exactly what she's going to talk about here because we practiced this. So I'm going to go ahead and do her part. So when we're talking about spending.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you, darling.
Okay. Thank you so much. Apologies to all our attendees. These things happen. Okay, so I'm going to go off on what Amy was saying regarding spending. My discussion and my contribution to the conversation is going to be regarding including all our learners. Our students are really diverse. We have a very diverse state. Washington State has people from different cultures and different ethnicities, and we need to consider different things, factors that affect their learning and how they absorb information, what they're familiar with. So when we talk about spending, it's important to acknowledge you're making a choice and give students that language, right? Kind of facilitate that conversation for them. Well, what are you going to spend on and why are you spending on that? It must be something you value. It must be something that's important to you. And those are really important things to talk about with your students, especially our students that come from different cultures and have families or habits that are different around spending. Another thing to take into consideration is you spend things other than money, other than currency. You spend time, right? And that's really that is the great equalizer. That is a resource everyone spends, and building that into the conversation, adding that into the conversation, working that into the conversation to foster belonging in your classroom and have that foundation when talking about spending, so everybody, all perspectives get taken into account, is something to keep in mind.
Awesome. Thank you. Next, we're going to talk about saving. And I know that sometimes, just like spending, saving can sometimes feel a little bit uncomfortable for us to breach this topic with our students. And I'll repeat this with some other behaviors, because sometimes and I'll just speak for myself, when you're not particularly good at something, it's challenging to try to take on that teacher role and explain it to students. Saving has been a challenge for me historically. And so I really love some of the self-awareness and the self-management that we talk about when, of course, saving has an opportunity cost, right? And it has a real one. And I think it's important to acknowledge and hold space for the fact that saving can be difficult. It can bring up difficult emotions. It's a different side of that opportunity cost when we're developing essentially delayed gratification, right? So just like a muscle, I used to say this to my math students all the time, just like a muscle, this is something that we can grow and develop and make stronger. We weren't necessarily born good savers, just like students aren't necessarily quote unquote born responsible, right? Responsibility is something you can develop. It's something you can work on. It's something you can improve. And so is your ability to save and in other ways manage your money. I really also think the self-efficacy part of this, anytime we're talking about goals, the self-efficacy part of this is so important because goals will go off track. They always go off track. And my best example of this is a budget. How I wish someone had explained to me when I was a kid that budgets are like diets. They just don't go according to plan. You can have the most perfect budget in the world, but something will happen and your budget will go off track and you're going to need to move with the ebb and flow of your money flow. And so how we can react to those changes is something we'll talk about a little bit more when we talk about credit, but how we react and how we recover from those goals going off track can be a really relatable thing for kids. You know, if you're connecting it to an academic goal, you know, you say, oh, you have this savings goal. And instead of putting in your $5 this week, you know, you went and got some candy. Do you just go get rid of all the money now? It doesn't matter anymore. No, you can start. You still have this foundation. You still have something you've worked towards. You can pick it up and keep going again. And every little bit counts. And that can be similarly applied to academic goals or achievement goals or growth goals, depending on whatever data it is you're collecting for your students. And Lady, you want to talk a little bit about considerations for equitable learning in state?
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy. So again, one of the things that we should keep in mind is language and the importance and the impact that words have. When considering saving, we usually say good saving, bad saving, or what makes a good saver. Let's talk about what makes a successful saver, right? What are the qualities that make a successful saver? You have to be patient. You have to be willing to wait. And these are all concepts and discussions that apply to all students, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of income. Also, keeping in mind the concept of time. Again, a great equalizer. Everybody wants to save time so they can spend it later on the things they really want to do. That's something that kids love and they're really going to connect with. Another thing that I want to bring up is introducing the activity of saving as a classroom activity, having a saving goal that everyone can participate and contribute to with behaviors or through achievement. And the empowerment that students feel cannot be overstated. When they feel that sense of accomplishment, it's incredible. And we always want to provide those opportunities for our students to feel empowered and acknowledge that they have a tremendous skill. Being patient is a skill. Not all, I know sometimes I don't do very well with patience. What just happened with this audio issue and the technical difficulty, I was impatient. I'm not going to lie. But again, these are some ways that we can approach this in classrooms in the most equitable, inclusive ways to promote belonging.